Okay. Had a little bit of an issue today. I didn't realize that this meeting wasn't actually scheduled on Zoom, so I don't know if anybody's going to get in or show up. We will see, but I got it up and running now. Same link should work. So if you're on YouTube watching this, you can jump over to the Zoom. If you want to jump in on the conversation, I apologize for the late start and not realizing that this wasn't actually officially scheduled. So here we go. Okay, so today I want to talk about kind of some of the stuff that we're going through. Some of the unsexy, unfun things about investing, real estate investing, just investing in general, building a business, and just all the sacrifice and the unfun stuff that you might go through. Um, Sometimes I ask myself, like, with everything that we're going through, all the sacrifice and late nights and not having money for things because we put all our money into a project, property project, either acquiring another property or doing renovations or whatever that may be. It gets tough. It's really tough at times, and right now especially, it's really tough. With rates the way they are, it makes things harder to cash flow, and so things margins are a lot tighter. Vacancies can kill you, renovations can kill you, and everything just seems to be really tough right now. So, like, we kind of have to remind ourselves why we do this. Like, is this really worth it? Um, and right now we're going through a lot of issues with one of our properties. This is one of our kind of our staple properties. It's kind of a cash cow. It cash flows well, but it's got some when it has repairs, they're big repairs, and it makes it really tough. We just had a roof that we had to get put on because our we had a cedar shake roof on this property. And last year, when the Palisades fires occurred, insurance companies stopped covering cedar shake roofs. They just said, we're not going to renew your policy because you have a cedar shake roof. The roof wasn't even that old. It was only like 15, I think 15 years old. It was still under warranty. Like there was it wasn't leaking. Well, I shouldn't say it wasn't leaking because it turns out there was a leak on a back, like a separate building on the property, but the main building didn't have a leak. Uh, and they said, we're not going to insure this anymore. And no other. So when an insurance company gives you a non-renewal, all insurance companies see that. It goes into a database and they can all see that there was a non-renewal and they can see why. So there was no way for us to get insurance with a California insurance provider with this roof on. And it was a very expensive roof. The quotes we were getting were anywhere from 35,000 to 48,000. It was a lot of money to come up with a roof that we weren't planning on doing. I mean, we were going to redo it eventually, but we weren't planning on doing that anytime soon. So that was a big surprise. Our insurance policy, I think, was around 2,500 a year at the time. And so what are you going to do? We have to have insurance. And if you don't have the funds to get the roof done right away, you got to figure something out. So we had to go with what's called a non-admitted carrier, which is basically an out-of-state insurance provider that's not admitted into the state. We're in California, so it was not an admitted carrier in the state of California, but they can still insure the property, but it's a much higher risk to the insurance provider, so it's a lot more expensive. So they don't provide insurance in the state typically, so they don't have millions of properties that they're covering and getting premiums from everybody to collectively reduce the risk on claims. So they're just insuring your property. So because of that, any claim they're fully responsible for with no other premiums coming in. So our insurance went from about 2,500 a year to 15,000 per year on a single family home. $15,000 for fire hazard insurance, which is absolutely insane. But what are you going to do? We had to have it, had to pay for it. So we had to bite the bullet and pay the 15,000 over the course of the last year. So that was a really tough break for us. We eventually ended up through one of my buddies, ended up finding a solar program that would pay for the roof because they could not install solar panels on the Cedar Shake roof. So it became a requirement. They had to upgrade the roof to put the solar these solar panels on, and we were able to get the solar system and the roof paid for, and it lowered what we were paying on our utility bill for power. So it actually ended up working out really well as we got a roof out of it. We're gonna have a consistent bill, and we do a midterm rentals with this property, so we cover all the utilities. So now, our utility bill is going to be a lot more consistent because it'll be this the same payment we make each month. It's a pretty big system, so we shouldn't go over that. It should end up covering all of the electricity costs. So our bill shouldn't go above 388 this first year, and then there's like a 3% increase each year. But nothing like we see with the power companies. I mean, sometimes we have $800,000 bills on this property in the summertime. So this it worked out, but we still had to pay that $15,000 for a year. And then there have been so many hoops we had to jump through, getting the roof permit done and getting the solar permit and getting everything approved. And as so it's definitely stressful, definitely makes us think, why are we doing this? Part of the whole roof situation, there was a leak that popped up. There's a second structure in the back, that has it's like a studio that previous owners had built back in the 90s, and it had a leak that a few months ago we had right before we got the roof done. There was some really big rains that came through, and I noticed some water damage on one of the walls. So I'm like, okay, great. So now we got to get that taken care of. So I wanted to wait until we got the roof done. So we got the roof done, then had a water mitigation company come in, to open up the wall, remove the wet drywall, and mitigate any damage and mold and whatnot. And it ended up being a bigger issue than originally thought. It wasn't just a few months ago we had a leak. It turns out it looks like it's been leaking for, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. I have no idea. So the damage was pretty extensive. Luckily, it's pretty localized in one spot. But there's definitely some framing that's got to be replaced. And all in all, the water mitigation, then the framing repair, and then putting all the drywall back, it's like a $10,000 repair that we were not planning on. So that's always fun. But when we look at this property and some of our other properties overall, a lot of times we have negative years. Like this year with all these capital expenditures, we're with the roof and the all the damage repairs that we're doing, and there's some other repairs we've had to do on the property. We're gonna operate at a loss this year. So it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we going through all this? Why are we having these sleepless nights with all these repairs and putting all of our money and savings into these properties to keep them going and keep them operating and keeping them in top shape? When the rents, even though we do actually cash flow this property pretty well, like, is it worth it? Why are we doing this? If we're going to lose money this year, what's the point? So we've stepped back this last year, and kind of reevaluated our portfolio and looked at what our property values were worth. We did talk to a listing agent about values on a couple of the properties, and we just listed one of them last week or a week and a half ago, and we're getting ready to list another one. And they were actually worth more than we were originally comping them at ourselves. So it turns out, in the last 5 years, we bought the first property 5 years ago. Well, I guess the first one I had since 2011. It was like an older property, but we started renting it out about 10 years ago. And then bought another property in 2020, which is the one that we just had all the issues with. And then we bought another one in 2023 and did a very extensive, very heavy remodel on that one, cross collateralized the one from 2011. So a lot of these properties are tied in because we roll equity from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Um, but looking at our equity on paper from just the last 5 years, we've gained almost $3 million in equity. So we've become millionaires just by holding these properties. And instead of selling when we could have sold several years ago, we held on to them because we knew how powerful the appreciation play could be. I think a lot of people have just said, why are you guys putting yourselves through this? Why are you doing this? Just sell your properties, just sell, 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 and don't go through the stress. And maybe it's our stubbornness, maybe it's just our eyes on the prize and looking towards the future and what we're building. But our stubbornness caused us to hold on to these and hang on. And in the last 5 years, we have gained almost 3 million in equity in these food properties that we have. So it's when you see that, it kind of like reminds you why this is why we do this. This is why we go through this. We are building something. We are building wealth. We are building generational wealth. 5 years ago, we didn't have this. We didn't have this 5 years ago. Uh, in 5 years from now, we keep doing this. Yes, we're selling these properties, but we're gonna buy more, and we're gonna have a big tax strategy issue, I guess, tax issue, and a big strategy around that this year to mitigate the taxable liability on the gains from the sale of these properties. But we're going to have to buy more real estate. That's really the only way to offset those gains. So we're going to keep going. And 5 years from now, where it's who knows what we'll be at that point, but I've got faith that it's going to be a lot higher. But because we're selling and then rolling these over into other properties, we're now going to be leveraging, taking the gains and leveraging those out to be able to buy more and more assets, not just trading assets. We'll be able to leverage and buy more. So really, if you look 5 years from now, we're not just going to gain another 3 million. And again, a lot of that, there was a lot of appreciation from inflation and just the market going crazy during COVID and things like that. But even without that, we push a lot of appreciation. So we actually force a lot of this appreciation, regardless of what the market is doing. But because we can now leverage and buy more properties, 5 years from now, we're not just looking at doubling our wealth, what we have, or doubling our assets. It's going to multiply, and that snowball effect starts to take hold, and it really, really starts to build, because now you're compounding that equity. So, you're not just taking that equity and rolling over into the same priced asset. You're taking that and you're splitting it up into down payments on 10 different assets or whatever that may be. So 5 years from now, our goal is to do this, play this game for 10 years. And I think once we get to the end of that 10-year mark, we are going to be set up pretty well. We'll have built a decent amount of wealth that we'll be able to pass to our heirs. And then we're not going to stop. But I think at that point, after the 10-year mark, I think we'll be at a point where it's like, okay, now this is all worth it. And I mean, it already is. It's still tough right now. We're not through it, but looking on paper and realizing that we built 3 million in equity is a pretty cool thing to see. That kind of makes it seem worth it, and kind of gives you motivation to keep going with it. So that's our plan. We're gonna keep going with it. We're in the middle of we're in the middle of doing these repairs on all this water damage. We've got a guest that's checking in a week from tomorrow, so we've got a very short period of time to get this done. So hopefully we can get this all knocked out and put back together before they show up. Otherwise, we're gonna have to cancel them or put them in a hotel until it's ready, and that's gonna get even more expensive. So hopefully we can make that happen. But yeah, so I mean that's our why is we look at everything that we've been through and like, okay, wow, we've got the equity, we've built up the equity now. Now let's take this and keep going and take it to the next level. So part of our strategy, so we're going to be selling, we're not selling all of our properties, but we are looking at selling two of them. If we sell both of them, we're probably going to have quite a bit of equity or quite a bit of capital gains. Um, it's funny because we're going to have more we on the first property, we're actually going to have more tax liability than the actual proceeds, because that's cross collateralized. So it's paying off one of the other property renovation loans. So we'll have probably end up with like a $600,000 tax bill, but we're only going to walk with 400,000 in cash. So go figure. So that's a fun scenario. You don't even have enough money, not enough proceeds from the sale to pay the tax bill on the sale. So that is the reality. This is also why people looking on the outside don't understand, like, what, when people just say, oh, just sell, just sell, just sell, then you'll make money, you'll walk away. Like, that's not exactly how it works. Like, they don't see all the intertwining, like, connections that we have with all of our properties and how it all works. They maybe don't understand capital gains and how that's taxed. But this property was purchased in 2011 for 410,000. We have not lived in it for 2 of the last 5 years, so we don't get a primary residence exclusion on it. So it's listed at 1.4 right now. It's getting a lot of interest in that. So at 1.4, you're looking at $1 million in capital gains. And because there's a cross collateralization and other loans on this property, after closing costs, we're going to walk with $400,000, but you're going to put a $550,000, $600,000 tax bill. So it's that's just how it works. Now we're not losing equity per se because we now have more equity in the other property that's cross collateralized with that because this property has a cross collateralized loan that did the renovations on another property, which will now get taken out with this first sale. So now the other one's going to have a lot of equity. It's still, equity that's trapped in the home itself, but now that property has a ton of equity, whereas it's still it did have a lot of equity. Now it's got even more, or will have more at that time. So if we sell both of them, we will definitely be looking to um, do bonus appreciation. So this is our plan. We are looking to buy out of state. And the reason we're looking for out of state is because California and I think urban markets, especially if they're close to the beach, your land value is always going to be higher. So the land to the improvement value or the building value is going to be a lot higher. So here it's about 85%. Like if you look at, so one way of doing this, actually, you know what? Let's just do this right here. Let me, let's just check this out. Okay, so you can do this by going to Redfin, and this is what I've been doing a lot lately. So I'm just going to, let's just go, we're in Costa Mesa. So let's just go to Costa Mesa, pull up a property here. I actually been talking to a cost segregation study company, and they were the ones that showed me how to do this. So let's just go Redfin for sale. Why is it not pulling up properties for sale? Okay, I guess this is fine. Don't know whose property it is. 2.6 million for a 4 bedroom, 3,000 square foot home. That's pretty average for around this neighborhood, which is kind of crazy. Okay, so if you go to Redfin, and you can't do this from the app, the phone app, you have to do it online. So if you go to Redfin, you scroll down to sales and tax history. Okay, you're going to go to tax history, and then you're going to look at, so this shows the what the property tax for the current owner is. Somebody that's going to buy this is going to have to pay a lot more, but so that's the total property tax. And then right here it says land plus additions. So this is your land, and then this is the additions. So the total assessment value with the county is 1.257. So if you take the land amount, which is 1.04798, and we'll divide that by the total, which is 1.257. Just do the whole thing, 692. Okay, so you're about 82.7. So about 83% of the value of this home or this assessment is in land. And they're saying only 216,000 is the addition. Now, it would cost a lot more to build this home for 216,000. Also, this home was listed for what, 2 point, almost 2.7, and the assessment here is only 1.2. So this is probably what these people paid for it. So if you go to sales history, let's see if it goes back and shows them. So here's what they paid. They paid 1.15 in 2020. It is assessed a little higher, so maybe they did some renovations, or it's just appreciated the last 5 years, and the county did a reassessment. So the county is saying that this is what it's worth. Now, when someone buys this property for 2.685, the new taxes are going to be based on 2.875, not this amount. However, the county uses this same ratio. So the county is still going to calculate 83% of the sale price as land value. So at 2.685 million, or 2.685, okay, times 0.83. So they're going to say that the land at that sale price is worth $2.28 million. And then the building is only going to be probably about double this, probably about 450, 500,000. So what we're doing is we're looking to do bonus depreciation. And I'll go into bonus depreciation in just a minute here. We talked a little bit about it in the past, but with bonus depreciation, what you're doing is you're looking at what portion of the property can be accelerated. So when you're doing depreciation, you can't take the land value because land is not depreciable. So you're only taking the additions. And usually in a single family home, this is going to be depreciated over 27 and a half years. In a commercial building, you're looking at 39 years. With accelerated depreciation, what you do is you hire a cost segregation company. What they do is they come in, they do this whole study on all the materials that make up the building. And I've been told that it does not matter if they are brand new or if they're 50 years old. The value of that is the same. So what they do is they look at the windows, they look at the roofing materials, they look at the copper wiring in the house, the copper piping, all these different things that if you were to replace the stuff once you already have the property in service, let's say you spend $30,000 on a roof, you don't you get to depreciate that roof on top of your normal depreciation, but you don't do 27 and a half years on that. It has a depreciation schedule. Usually with repairs and stuff, it's going to be either 5 years, 7 years, or 15 years. So what the cost segregation study does is it goes in there and looks at all these things that it can pull out and be like, okay, if you were to just repair these, this is the schedule, depreciation schedule for these items. So these items are 5 years, this bucket of items is 7 years, and this bucket of items 15 years. So you can actually pull that stuff and accelerate it to 5, 7, and 15. Now it's going to be a combination of those three different this depreciation schedules, but instead of doing it over 27 and a half years, you get to kind of bring it forward to the front. So you're able to take higher depreciation in those initial years. Now, with the new law that passed last year for bonus depreciation, you can take all that depreciation that qualifies for accelerated depreciation and bring it all to year one. So you can take all of it in the first year that you place that property in service. So you buy a property this year, you put it in service, you can, and you don't have to actually have it rented, you have to have it listed for rent. So at least putting it in service or attempting to put it in service, and you can take all that depreciation that's qualified for accelerated depreciation and bring it all to year one. Now, with California, this doesn't really give us a whole lot because these ratios of the land value is so high, there's not a lot of depreciation available here. Now, let's go to another market that we invest in. Now, typically with accelerated depreciation, it's every property is different. There's no like set amount, but they say that usually you can figure about 25% of the total asset that's depreciable. So the total addition portion, it's going to be about 25%. So out of that 216,000, you probably get about 50,000 that could be accelerated, and then you could push that to year one for bonus depreciation. So if you go into another market, this is Wichita Falls, which we invest in. Let's just pick something here. These are some property values are a lot different here than they are. Okay, let's take this black one right here. All right, so this is a $100,000 property. So let's see. This would be like a $2 million property in California. Okay, so down here, tax history. So we got the same thing. You see the land additions, the same thing. Now, if you look at the land on this one, out of $103,000 assessment, the land is 5,000 and the additions, the building is 98. This is a complete flip-flop from what we see here in Orange County. So the land, so it's 5,000, which is probably pretty typical for a lot out there. Divided by 103,633. So the land is less than 5% of value, whereas in California, it's 83%. Huge difference. So what that means is that this 98,000, this is the additions, this is the building, this is the portion you get to depreciate over 27 and a half years. If you do a cost segregation study, you're going to pull out 25% of this. So 25% of this can be accelerated and pushed into year one with bonus depreciation. That's $25,000. Doesn't seem like a lot, but $25,000, if you do two of these, you're at 50,000. You've spent $200,000 in assets to get a $50,000 bonus depreciation. That other property in California is going to be, what was it, $2.68 million, I think, or did I do that right? Hold on. No, that was at this old price. Okay, so at the new price, 2.685 times 0.17. Okay, so the depreciable assets is 456,000, and if we do 25% of that for accelerated, you're at 114,000 for bonus depreciation. So 115,000. Okay, so let's say we got to buy four of these. You got to buy four of these properties to get to roughly 100,000 in bonus depreciation. That's $400,000 versus almost $2.7 million in California to get the same depreciation schedule. Now, with California, because that property is costs a lot more to actually rebuild, you can fight that. They don't just go by the assessment here. However, land still, this will tell you that land is still going to trump and be worth a lot more on the overall ratio. So you can fight it. You can have the appraiser say, "Hey, these are the replacement costs," and you can definitely get that. You can definitely bring that up on the addition value and get more bonus appreciation, but you're going to have to battle it, and it's not a guarantee because they're going to look at this and regardless of what the taxes are, land is just worth more near the beach than it is inland. So what we're looking at doing is we're looking at investing here in Wichita Falls or somewhere else that has a lower land value and a higher addition value to be able to get more of that accelerated depreciation brought to the front. So the next part of this, where we're really looking to up our game, I guess, or up the value of the depreciation we're able to get, is we're looking at doing a mobile home park purchase. The reason we're looking to do that is with a mobile home park, you don't actually own any of the properties. A mobile home park owner owns the land, you own the infrastructure, you own the roads, you own, all the utilities and things that are brought in, but you don't own the properties. The properties are all owned by the homeowners. So the homeowners are paying you rent. You only own the land. Now, if your land is only, 5% of the value of the property, and these are bigger projects, like mobile home park might cost $1 million out here. um, there was one that we were looking at the other day. It was 90 lots. It was a 90 lot mobile home park for $900,000. But if you look at that and if only 5%, so let's just use $900,000 because that was one that existed. Um, if it's 5% is the land, you look at 95%, 855,000 is your depreciable, and this is from it being developed. So you developed it again, the roads, the infrastructure that's there. When they do a cost segregation study on a mobile home park, you are now there's no building that you're looking at, but you're still looking at the developed part, so the addition. So it's not the raw land. You take out the raw land, take out that 5%. Everything else is now highly depreciable because the infrastructure you get. One, I mean, one, you've got it's just land and then just all this infrastructure, but two, you've got really high um, allocation of accelerated depreciation because of the way that the land is developed. So a lot of times in mobile home parks, instead of getting 25% of the addition portion that you can accelerate, you can see like 60%. I mean, some people have even gotten up to like 90%. So somewhere between 60 and 90% of that 855,000 can be depreciated on an accelerated basis. So let's just go with 60% of 855,000. That's $500,000. So if you buy three of these mobile home parks, you could potentially get $1.5 million in bonus depreciation in 1 year versus buying that other property at 2.7, which is the same as three of these parks at 900,000. And you're only going to end up with what, 115,000. So it's literally 10 times more depreciation that you can get by buying a mobile home park in a state with lower land value versus buying a property here in California. So doesn't make sense to buy here for this strategy. I think we will buy here again, but for this strategy, we're going to have to go out of state to offset these taxes. And then Once we take care of that issue, then we can look at buying more properties in California and for our strategy that we use here. So that is what we're looking at doing. Again, it's not easy. It's a lot of work. It's definitely have those days that we wonder, is this worth it? We have the house that we sold, we were fixing it up, and were actually living there for a short time while we were working on it. And we wanted to try to sell it for as much as possible. So we didn't want to be living there while we were trying to show it. We finished up repairs. We did some more repair. We moved out as quickly as possible, did some more repairs, and um, had it like professionally staged so it shows really well. And we did that so we could try to capitalize on selling it for as much as possible. But we had to move again. We moved into temporary housing. So we are currently in a furnished rental. We're living in it's actually by the beach, so it's not terrible. It's funny because that is the most cost-effective temporary living situation we could find. The properties that we rent in our portfolio rent for $10,000, $12,000 a month right now. And so we got something for like half of that. But it's funny that we had to get a beach house to be a beach house ended up being the most cost effective place for us to live. But the reason is because in our area, the beach properties rent in the summer for an astronomical amount, but the rest of the year they have trouble renting it out. And what happens when you get closer to, so June is when the rates go up. When you get closer to June, if they have a vacancy, it's harder for them to fill because there's like a short gap that they have to fill before that price goes up. The price that we're paying now goes up more than 4 times in June. It's like the rate that we're paying now is actually lower than the weekly rate starting in June. So we won't be staying there, but that's how we were able to find a vacant home that wasn't rented. They'd rather collect, 2 months of rent, and we actually negotiated a lower rent than they were asking. Um, they'd rather collect some rent than nothing before those summer rates kick in because it's just going to sit vacant until then. So we were able to get a nice home for us that's close to the beach so we can enjoy it a little bit. Makes the quick last minute move a little more palpable, but still, again, that's a sacrifice. We move a lot. We move a lot, and we're living out of a storage. All of our stuff's in a storage unit right now, and that's just part of our strategy. But is it worth it? When we look at what we built on paper and see 3 million in equity, yeah, I think that looking back, that was well worth it. And now when we take those proceeds and we balloon those out or we leverage those out and seeing what we can do in the next 5 years, I think in 5 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, wow, I'm so glad that we made those sacrifices now, while our family was young, because life's getting busier. We have 4 kids now, and it's going to continue to get busier. And 5 years from now, we're going to be deep into school. All the kids will be in school. Um, yeah, I think all the kids will be in school. Our youngest will be in TK or kindergarten, and they will all be in school. They will all be playing sports on the weekends, going practices during the week, and we're gonna have a very, very busy life. But because of what we're doing now, we are setting ourselves up to have a much easier life financially and just not having to make the sacrifices that a lot of people may have to make at that point, but we've already made them. So yeah, I think it's worth it. I guess time will tell, but already just what we've built up in the last 5 years, when we look at that, it really kind of makes it all make sense. So, that's pretty much all I have today. I don't know. I know some people are probably having trouble getting in here. Let me see if there's any comments on the YouTube stream. If anybody has anything, comment, any questions, anything you're going through. Um, and I know everybody has struggles, whether it's with properties that you're buying and owning or a business that you're building. Maybe you are in real estate, but you don't own anything. You're doing midterm rentals, you got short-term rentals, you're just building out a portfolio, whether it's arbitrage or co-hosting. You're still building equity in, your business. You're building up a following, you're building up a lead, your lead network, and you're building equity in something that's picking up steam and starting to snowball. So What, however you're building wealth, however you're building your business and building your income, it's hard sometimes as an entrepreneur and an investor to like see the end goal and realize that everything that you're doing today, it's for a reason and it's going to pay off. It may be tough right now. It may be a little more difficult, and it's not the easy path. But if you look 5, 10 years ahead, you're going to be looking back at today and realizing or saying like, I'm so glad that we made those sacrifices when we did. And then when you get to that point, that's when everybody else that's telling you right now, hey, you should quit, just give up, or not give up, but just sell your properties, like make things easier, go get a regular job. We hear that. Go get a regular job. Um, I I think that those are the people, those are the people that right now are saying those things. But then when you get to that point, and you're at that 10-year mark looking back, those are the people that say, oh, you're so lucky. It's not fair. You're so lucky. You got lucky. Must be nice to have all those houses, or must be nice to have a business that's so successful. Like, nobody talks about the sleepless nights. Nobody talks about not having, money because you're broke because you put everything into your business, or you put it all into these your portfolio. Like, nobody seems to remember that, or doesn't really focus on that. You definitely remember. I know we're going to remember, but it's definitely I would say a path less traveled, but the reward is very, very good. So all right, guys, that's all I've got for today. I've actually got we have an open house for our kids' school we got to get to, so I'm gonna cut out a little early today. If you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the comment section on YouTube, or come to the school community and ask them there, and we'll help out with whatever.